If you've ever struggled to develop an effective serve for your players, you're not alone. For years, I developed a serve in isolation. Teach the player the perfect movement, the perfect position of the elbow, only to see it fall apart when it matters the most, in a match. In this exclusive deep dive, I'm going to share with you my exclusive presentation from the 2024 Tennis South Africa Coaches Conference. I was a keynote speaker and one of my main presentations was based on developing the serve via play. Stick around because in this presentation I'm going to share with you some real life examples which you can take on court this evening with your players and develop their serve via play. And thanks once again for a really nice introduction. It's an absolute pleasure and honour, like I mentioned yesterday, to just even present some thoughts, some theories in and around tennis coaching to such a wide range of tennis coaches in South Africa. I am truly humbled and really thank you to all the messages and stuff I received from yesterday's presentation as well. They really, really mean a lot to me. But today we're going to kick it up a gear. Yesterday we talked a lot about trying to develop more skillful and adaptable players via play. And today we're going to be a bit more specific. We're going to look at developing the serve via play. And just in case you missed yesterday's presentation, I'm not going to go into detail here, in case you were here as well. But Steve Whelan, tennis coach and tennis coach developer now. Been a coach for 22 years, coach educator for the past 10 years. And I've been really exploring the ecological dynamics approach to tennis coaching. So if you missed yesterday's presentation or you're not familiar with the ecological dynamics approach, it's a hands-off, non-linear approach. Very player-centered, where the player develops their own movement solutions to problems that coaches set. And we looked at yesterday about the difference between technique and skill. And I posed the question, do we need technical players or do we need skillful players? And hopefully you came away with yesterday's presentation with, you know what, probably we need skillful players. And that's what ecological dynamics is all about. It's developing skill, multiple solutions, movement solutions to various problems that we have via sport. And we talked yesterday a little bit as well about my background. That is not in tennis, it's mainly in football or soccer. I play tennis just as a hobby. I played football to a decent level, but I was very much self-taught. I didn't really have much coaching. When I did have coaching, it didn't really work out for me because I just love playing sport. I love playing the game. I didn't like listening to tennis coaches or football coaches very much. It didn't really make much sense to me. But that's a little reintroduction to who I am, in case you missed my presentation yesterday. But I do believe it is available on a recording as well. So please catch up on that because we're going to almost carry on today what we started yesterday. So I do have some things I want to try and cover again today, trying to discover. I want to try and bridge that gap between practice and performance. Can we bridge the gap between the practice court and the performance court? And in a great presentation yesterday from Wayne, he did touch upon this. It's when we isolate skill or technique and we develop it in isolation, there's very little transfer to the match court because it's complete opposite. It's a different type of skill. So how can we bridge that gap today? Again, I'm going to show you lots of practice designs of how I do it, but we're really going to focus in and around the serve today. We'll be really specific and just focus on the serve. And the serve is such an important shot. And we've got some stats here from Brain Game Tennis, Craig O'Shaughnessy. And we know these now. These are always front and center with a lot of stuff that we do, especially within coach education over the past couple of years, that we know the most common rally length in tennis is one. The serve generally goes in, very rarely comes back. If we look at the average number of shots over a big wide range of points, it's generally just one. The average rally length in tennis is 3.8. So tennis is really short and sharp. So therefore, we're serving quite a lot. We're returning an awful lot. And the most common pattern now within tennis is serve plus one, and it ranges between 60 to 70% of players taking it on the forehand. Slight difference between male and female players, but again, they're sort of just some baseline stats that we use. However, as coaches, we really neglect the serve. We only really serve the last 10-15 minutes of a session, and I've been guilty of this myself. You do a lesson, last 10 minutes of a lesson, you get the basket at the back of the court, you get the player to hit some serves, and that's it. That's our serving time when we look at the technique. And when I challenge coaches, now I challenge my own thinking on this, a few common themes come out. Oh, it's complex. very difficult to serve. There's so many body parts moving, 49 separate parts of the body, or whatever it is, and that's really boring as well. Like, because like it's not fun if you keep missing serve. It's like it's really fun because the players find it really difficult. It's not an easy shot. We don't actually do a lot of things above our head as humans. Mechanic, window cleaner, maybe a few things I can think about, but most stuff we do is below our body. So our coordination, our dexterity, we're really comfortable below the shoulder. Anything above the shoulder is really difficult because we don't do a lot of stuff up in that space. And it has to be isolated because it's such a complex and difficult shot. We've really just got to zone in and really work hard on the technique. And we looked at yesterday that, well, we don't need technically great servers. We need unbelievably skillful servers. And this is how we would traditionally coach the serve. And again, I mentioned this yesterday. I'm not saying like this is the wrong way to coach it. What I'm going to present today is an alternative way of coaching it, a way in which hopefully you'll see benefits of trying it this way. I'm not saying, and I get into lots of heated arguments on social media. I'm trying not to get any more heated arguments. Like, there is some benefit to this, but it's minimal. So player serving on their own with no opposition, so it's unopposed practice, and they're just serving into the box. And when I challenge coaches on this, I say, well, they need to work on their technique, Steve. I don't want to put a returner down there because it puts too much pressure on them. And if there's any pressure on them, then they can't perform. And I've been guilty of this. I spent many years coaching this way. But there's definitely more negatives than there are positives with this type of training because there's no opponent. There's no pressure. This is not tennis. To me, this is the driving range version of tennis. Golf driving range, sorry for any golfers out there, but the driving range is one of the fakest environments you can find because it's perfect. The ball lies on a mat or a tee, and you're just hitting from a very sterile environment. This is, again, it's too pretty. It's too perfect. It's too easy. And the player you see, and this guy's a coach who came on a workshop. He's comfortable. He's serving. He's got loads of coaches watching him. He's got people in the cafe watching as well, but he's quite comfortable. But it's not the game. To really be effective at serving, we talked about this yesterday. We need perception. We need information from the environment. We need to interact with the environment. And I've got 3 pictures on the screen for you just to have a little look at. So the first one is a set of stairs and escalators. And which one would you choose? Would you choose the left-hand escalator? Would you choose the stairs? Would you choose the right side escalator? Let's, for example, say the escalators are going upwards. One's not going the opposite direction. So, but which one would you choose? If you look at the middle picture, we've got a motorway here in the UK. It's very rare because the cars are moving in that picture. We don't get many. It's normally traffic jams where I live, just outside of London. But what lane do you choose to be in? When do you choose to change lanes? How do you know how quick to go? How do you know when to brake? How do you know when to go into the outside lane, inside lane? How do you know when to change lanes? And then we've got the last picture in New York where I was at last year, and that's not my picture, but New York's a very busy place and very difficult to cross from roads in New York. So if you walk up that road, do you choose to walk on the left-hand side or the right-hand side? Do you choose to cross at the first crossing, second crossing, or further up the road? We take in information as humans all the time. Our perceptual vision, how we see the world, really dictates the decisions we make. If I'm tired, I'm going to take the stairs on the left. If I'm feeling energetic and I'm 4 coffees down, I'm probably going to run up those stairs. Sorry, if I'm energetic. If I'm really tired, I'll take the escalators. If I'm going off to the left to the shops, I'll take the left one. Going to the right, I'll take the right one. I might take the right one because I'm right-handed. Again, these subconscious decisions that we make, again, same to driving or walking up a street. We take in the information around, we react and interact with the environment around us all day, every day. If we look back to that last video of the coach serving, there's no information there. So what's going to help guide him make decisions? Nothing. So we have to create environments like we looked at yesterday. We create practices, we create environments that the player can interact with, start to make decisions, and then find a movement solution, technique, if you want to use the word technique, find a way of performing within that environment. And for me, the environment is absolutely key. What we have to understand is the environment will affect the behavior of the player. If I play tennis and no one's watching, and then all of a sudden 300 people like on this call turn up to watch, I will present, so I will play completely different. The environment will shift. If I'm 40 love up compared to 40 love down, my behavior will be different. We have to understand that what is around us, the environment, is constantly changing and evolving, and that will have an impact on player behavior. That behavior we choose, again, I can't remember whose presentation was. Great hint on this was the behavior will change based on the environment. Therefore, the behavior is linked to the performance. I think it was the second presentation yesterday about like the players will not engage if they're not alert and ready. It affects behavior, it affects performance. Environment affects the behavior. And we've got to understand this as tennis coaches. And I always say the environment in which we set up as coaches, it's like a ballet environment. We teach these very explicit, perfect sequence moves. That's my best ballet impression. And then you go into a tennis match and it's a one-on-one battle. It's a boxing fight. It's a mixed martial arts fight, if anything, because your opponent has multiple ways they can hurt you, but you've also got multiple ways in which you can hurt them. So we've got to try and get the environment more realistic. We've got to stop teaching ballet and start teaching the skills these players need to be competitive and compete. And how the player interacts with that environment is key. How they behave in that environment, what information they take in from that environment, how do they make the decisions, what helps them make these decisions. And these are just some, again, guidelines of what players use, and everyone will look at the world differently. And I mentioned this yesterday in the presentation. Like as coaches, we will see a player perform through our lens, and our own lens is based on the angle in which we stand, our experience, our personal skill set. The player will look at it from a completely different point of view. They'll see it completely different. We don't see the game the same two ways. So we have to understand it's not about how we see the world, how we see the tennis environment. It's how the player interacts with that environment. How does the player see the environment? And once we have empathy and we can see it from the player's point of view, we're going to become more effective coaches. So things they can take in: opponent, position, history. So I say history there, like you may play someone and you know they're really aggressive off the forehand return. Previous points in the match, I'm really struggling with my backhand return. You keep serving out wide to my backhand and I'm not very effective. You're taking that information in. You may also take in my body language. If I'm really hyped up, I'm really looking like I'm a caged animal. It's probably going to have an effect on you serve. If I stand there really timid and quite shy and I'm trying to hide my backhand with my court position, it's going to affect how you serve. We take in all this information, even if we are not consciously taking it in. The score, like again, we serve a lot without the score. I will serve differently if I'm 40 love up compared to love 40 down. But how often as coaches, again, I'm guilty here. How often do we just practice serving, but there's no score? Then all of a sudden you add the score elements in and the effect, the behavior of the player changes. The conditions. I was playing the other week, sun was out, and I know it's rare for England to the sun be out, but then all of a sudden the dark clouds come over, a little bit of rain. It affects how I behave. I start to make more excuses. I'm slipping, I don't want to fall over. So the effect of the environment changing had a negative effect on my behavior because I was losing. I start to make more excuses. I try to find I try to find reasons why I start to miss. But also my self-awareness. Like if I'm tired, my confidence is high. If I'm stressed and anxious, it's gonna have an effect. These are all information that I've got to be tuned into the environment. I have to be aware of what's around me and how that's going to affect my behavior. So what we look at next is, okay, lots of now practical examples of how we can make our practices more real. And like yesterday, I will send a link out to this presentation with all the videos embedded, so you can watch the videos back at your own time. For me, this is just something that I use. It's based on a little bit of science there. So I've got the references down the bottom. but it's called representative practice design. So it's a score of 1 to 4 in this chart. And if we look at a closed, isolated drill, so that player before that we just looked at, they were serving on their own, no opponent, no score, classic way of coaching the serve. That's a 1. It's not the game of tennis. It doesn't look like the game of tennis because you don't play tennis on your own. The research and the science will show that there's very limited transfer of learning. It will not transfer from that isolated, sterile environment to the dynamic, competitive tennis environment. And we tend to do that to really focus on technique or form. Now, I'm not saying don't do it, because you may get a player who's really struggling with confidence, and you may isolate it completely there to build up a little bit of confidence. And that's fine. But we have to understand as coaches that the longer the player stays in that low representative mode, the less skill will transfer. And then we have the fully representative out of 4. It's almost identical to real life performance. There's a high level of learning and complexity to it. And it's quite challenging. But that also can have a negative effect, because if we make things too open and they're playing tennis and they haven't quite learned the skill yet, that will also have the same effect. They almost get lost. I always say it's like the buffet. You go to all you can eat buffet. If there's too much choice, you don't quite know what to pick, and you put things together that don't really go well together. So our job as coaches is to move players up and down this scale. That's the art of coaching, differentiation, stages of learning, whatever way you want to phrase it. But the job here is to move the players around the scale. But I want to try and get more towards the actual game of tennis than stuff that just won't transfer and is not the game. I don't really want to be at a 1 for very long. We looked at this yesterday. So what are my golden rules for play? So again, in all these practice designs, there has to be decisions for players to make. There has to be a high level of variability. Got to be competitive. There's got to be problems to solve. That's my role within all this. My role is the quiz master. I set the problems. It's not, in my opinion, it's not my job to give solutions. My job is to guide the player to making better decisions, finding more better solutions. But my job is to create chaos. My job is to make things difficult at times. And again, the art of coaching is finding the right level of strain that you want to put the players under. The player's job in all this is relatively simple. Find a way. Can you find the solution to the problem that I'm going to present to you? And these, again, just some of my ideas. The coaching on the right there, if you look at the picture, he's not actually that tall. I think he's jumped, but what a great picture. Sorry, I'm confused. It's distracted, sorry. So first drill, relatively simple. All I've done is put a returner down there. But by putting a returner down there, I'm giving the player, the server here in the red, more information to use. They're going to be taken into consideration where the serve is placed. That's going to have an impact of where the serve's going to go, how they're going to hit it, where they're going to hit it, sorry, again, what type of spin, what type of pace. The returner down the far end's gone pretty central, so not leaving any gaps, but you may see a returner go out to the side a little bit more. They may go out towards the tee a little bit more as well. So there's lots of information being taken in here as well. But once the server hits the serve, they'll start to get information, because if the returner starts creaming the returns, all right, I've got to do something a little bit different here. I can't just roll the serve in. Before, when the server was on their own, if they're just tapping the serve in, we've got no feedback. We've got no information. And I see it all the time. I'll roll the serve in and the coach will go, yeah, good, good. Well, we don't know it's good because the returner might cream it. And again, if we're playing against an opponent and that opponent is adaptable, 1 minute, what is an effective serve, 3 or 4 service games later on might be ineffective because the opponent has changed. So we need to give that information. If I'm doing a private lesson, I am never down this end with the server. I'm down the far end, because I want the server to get a proper look of what a serve looks like. A serve includes a returner. But also, as the returner, I get an understanding of how effective that serve is. So I really, really do believe, and I did start social media war almost the other week about like you shouldn't do unopposed serving practice, and people get really angry with it. Yeah, well, everyone does it. Yeah, I know everyone does it. Doesn't mean it's right. And I'm not saying like if you don't have anyone to practice with, I'm not saying that it's pointless, but the transfer is limited. If that's the only thing you can do that day, then fine, hit some serves into the empty box. You can play around with it if you want by making scores up and stuff as well. But you can't play without returner. You really, really can't, because again, that returner is going to change. Therefore, you're going to have to change as well. So the first one, just add a returner, make it look and feel a bit more like tennis. The second one here, okay, we're going to start getting a bit more specific now about developing different types of movement, different types of skill, or you can call it technique. A common thing that I find a lot with players, especially juniors, is they decelerate the racket because they're scared of missing. They don't want to miss. Double faults seem like this big embarrassing thing. Oh, double faults. It seemed like a big embarrassing thing. So juniors especially, but adults, slow the racket down. So what I've done in this clip here, again, you can't hear the audio. That's not the best clip, not the best practice to see on video because you can't really see the effect on the other side. But the server can serve up to the baseline. So they can serve between the net and the baseline. They've got the whole half court. They can't go tram lines, but they've got the whole half court to go into. So what I'm trying to do here is get the player to speed the racket up, because now you have the opportunity, the affordance, the opportunity to really serve quite deep and jam the returner up. The only way you're going to do that is by increasing the racket head speed, by hitting through the ball, by getting the ball tossed out in front of you. If you throw the ball behind you, which this coach did at the very start, and they were almost doing like a top spin, slice, hybrid. But no, hang on, you've got an opportunity here to be really aggressive. And you're probably seen a few goes here with the coach. What he starts to do, he starts to hesitate and that's fine, because what he's doing is he's trying to self-organize. He's trying to work out, okay, well, how can I hit this deep? How can I hit it really, really quick and really, really effective? And you can see here, he takes a couple of throws, and I'm not saying nothing at the side there. I'm just letting him go, because he's now trying to solve the problem. He's trying to find the movement solution. And it's really interesting when you do this exercise, because what you'll find is most of the players, they won't serve between the service line and the baseline. They'll serve the ball in, and it'll be quite close to the service line, because they'll generate lots of racket head speed and spin. The ball will naturally get pulled down into the box anyway. But all I'm doing there, Jedi mind trick, talked about Jedis yesterday, is I'm taking away the constraint in the service box. All right, you got the full half court, use it. And now the player's got an opportunity to actually let that racket go and not slow it down. On to the next one. So now I'm going to look to really affect the player's behavior and how they feel. And we're going to make it a bit more competitive. So with this practice, again, relatively simple. The server just has to make 4 first serves. Gets a first serve in from the right. They now have to get first serve in from the left. They just got to get the serve in. The return is just down there again to return and give the player information. So the player's got 2 in a row here. They need 4 in a row. 4 in a row to win a set. This is his third one. Just got to get it in the service box as well, I like to point out for this one. This is the 4th one. Get this in, win the game. All he's got to do is get it in. Has to be a first serve, though. Can't just tap it in. Yes, he missed. So what I've done here is, okay, I've just added a little bit of a layer on. I'm like making a serve lasagna here. I'm just adding little layers. Okay, so you get the serve in, great. Can you get some racket head speed? Great. Now can you serve with a little bit of score pressure? I was interested because the coach in the clip here, he's really confident. Like, he gets in the first 3. And you can see now on the 4th one, he's starting to take his time a little bit. His body language is starting to change a little bit. Now he takes a little look back as well at the coaches watching him. And then he decelerates the racket, hits the ball low and misses. And it's interesting how score, when we get close to winning, how excited we get. And he said, in it's sort of, you can't hear him unfortunately, but he says in the workshop, yeah, I got excited. I really wanted just to slow it down and get it in, but you said it has to be a first serve. So I've just added the element to the score. It's realistic, 15, 30, 40 game, 4 first serves in, you win the point. And you can tailor this as well. So you could say, well, you don't only just have to get it in, but you've got to force the returner to give a short ball away. If the returner hits the ball deep, or if the returner hits the ball and you miss ball 3, then you don't win the set. So you can tailor it as well. But again, I'm just manipulating the game. I'm creating an environment where the player's got to find the skill. And it was great before because he was getting all these serves in. But now we've added a little bit of challenge. You can see that the movement's changing because his behavior is changing. And like I said yesterday, all I'm trying to do here is create an environment that starts to look and feel more like tennis. And in terms of the technique or the movement, like he's just trying to develop those things as well. And we'll look a little bit more at that as we go through this presentation. So now I'm going to change the task as well. So because again, once you put a player in this situation, what will tend to happen is they'll start to get better at it. They'll start to improve and sort of improve the task, improve the game. So what I've done now is, okay, the return is going to start in a crazy position. So I don't know if you've seen it there, but I'll definitely sort of pause it in a minute. The returner now starts outside the half court, and then they play the point out. So if you watch here, if I pause it on the next one, in your own time, fellas, come on. So you can see, oh, sorry. You can see here. So the return, so you've got the server on the right-hand side here. The returner is on the same side as the server. So I'm giving the server a different problem. Okay, they think they've got an open goal here. Should be easy, right? Empty service box. Surely the pressure is all on the returner, and the returner can choose to stay on the same side, or they can choose to stand in the tram lines on the opposite side, but they just can't stand in between the service lines. And I'll let this play out. And again, I'm just putting a lot of challenge here on the server because I mentioned now you think it's easy because you've got an empty service box. What the server has to try and do now is find a way to apply challenge to a returner. And they could do it with speed, spin, precision. How they choose to serve is really up to them. And that's what I'm doing now. You can't hear me on the audio, but I'm saying, okay, well, if they're starting there, what serve could you hit? Now, it's interesting here because I think he goes T, but you could go back in behind the returner. Now, the rules I set in this game is the returner can start to move once the server starts direction. Once the server starts direction, they have to commit to the serve. They can't throw it up and let it drop. So they've got to commit to the serve. So it goes back to what we were saying yesterday. Once you throw it up, it may not be the perfect ball toss. Okay, well, you've got to adapt in. You've got to adapt how you serve and hit that ball in. And you can see there, like the server starts feeling a bit of tension now. Like in theory, in his eyes, in his perception, he shouldn't miss. In reality, tennis is a bit more challenging than that. Because what we perceive as an easy shot is actually quite challenging and quite difficult. So you can play around with the returner's positions as well. So they're just a couple of little examples. But again, I mentioned this yesterday. It's not just playing games. I'm really keen on having an intent, having a reason, a method to my madness. Because again, you'll get the comments from parents and other coaches, yeah, but you don't stand there in a match. You're saying about being representative and being realistic to the game of tennis, but a returner's not going to stand out there. You don't get to serve up to the baseline, Steve. No, because I'm trying to develop skill. I'm trying to develop skill that is transferable into a match. Martina Navratilova, not easy for a Scouser to say, and I won't just about pronounce it right, used to train for 5 sets, but she'd only ever play 3. Why? Because she trained to extremes. So then when she got into a match, it felt easy. And you listen to any of the top players, they always say that. They trained a lot harder than they competed. So when they had to then come up with the answers within a competition, they knew and they understood they can play to those extremes. So what skills do players need to transfer here? Being very specific to the serve. They've got to be able to take in information. They've got to process information, opponent, environment, themselves. They've got to make decisions on the serve, what, why, and how. They've got to also appreciate their emotions. If I'm really tight and I'm really nervous, I've probably got to address that before I start thinking about any technical or movements, because I'm not going to be able to move as smooth or as fluid if I'm anxious and my muscles are tight. And the player, that's why we get 20 seconds in between. I've done entire tennis lessons of what you should do between points. How can you control emotions? How can you take in information to help you make a decision of how the next point's going to be played? As tennis coaches, mentioned this a bit yesterday, we focus so much on the action, but are we actually teaching the players of how to process information, what to look for, what to use to help make decisions, and then allowing them to explore different decisions as well? So take in the environment. Then how do they interact with the environment? And we know these very technical, basic sort of theories or phrases: control time, control space. I can manipulate the ball with my racket work, body work, and footwork by changing the height, speed, spin, and power. I can also get the direction and depth. I can manipulate the environment. I can interact the environment using my body by doing that to the tennis ball. They're the skills we need. How we do that is pretty much up to the player. Again, you won't see in this presentation me saying, well, the grip's got to be here, elbow's got to be there, racket's got to follow this path, follow through on the same side, turn the wrist. It depends. There's a reason why no two players in the world will serve the same way, because how they take in the environment, how they interact with the environment are two completely different things, and they're unique to the player. Now, we have basic biomechanical models that we use, but we have to understand that each player will then use a biomechanical model in their own way. Our role here is to make sure they don't get injured and they are efficient and effective in finding a movement solution that's unique to them. You only have to look at Tiafoe or Medvedev. You probably say they haven't got the classic serves, but these players are top 10 in the world, world number one in Medvedev's case, multiple Grand Slam finalist. Like, it may not look like we want it to look, but he's found his way of playing. Again, Roddick, one of the greatest serves ever, had his way of serving. Don't think Roddick would have survived a UK tennis system, unfortunately. So let's now look at some common technical fixes, movement fixes. Again, I said yesterday, I'll use the word technical because it's a nice common language. For me, it's all about movement solutions. So player is struggling with racket head speed, deceleration of the racket. So all I've got here, I've got an under 10 player, and we've got what we call a fluff ball. It's like it's literally a ball of fluff, but it's a little bit dense, so it moves. I've also given the player a smaller racket. He's got a 21-inch racket, because the smaller the racket, the quicker he can move it through the air. And we're just working on generating racket head speed. And you probably see straight away, this player has a very low and at one point a bowling action on his serve. And I'm just trying to get him really to find a way of getting that racket to move quicker. And we've just set up a situation with the fluff ball. Again, I've gone cross court. Now I know the fluff ball's not going to travel very far. So I've came on this side so I can hit the fluff ball back to him. But I'm getting him to serve from the serving position. He still has to serve cross court, but I'm trying to get him to speed up the racket here. Can he speed up the racket through the ball? Acceleration. And players do it because they lack confidence. We've got the same player. And with this player in particular, I mentioned before, I inherited him from a previous coach, and he had very much a bowling action. And you can probably see here within a few clips, it's very straight arm, not a traditional throwing action from the pre-throw position. And a big theory in mine is his footwork. And you may see it in some of the other clips later on, but he moves a lot of his feet. His left foot moves, his right foot moves. So what I've done here is I've put a wobble board. So a board that we've blown up. It moves when you stand on it. It's completely unstable because I want him to find more stability in his feet. I want him to generate force from using his racket head and not turn his shoulders and hips around and cheat. So I've created instability to try and get stability. And again, this will help with his ball toss as well, because he won't be able to shift round. And all I've given him here is the command of, well, can you serve and keep that left leg as stable as possible in an unstable or unstable position? And you can see that he started to generate some good racket head speed. But once again, I'm down the far end. I'm down the far end because I'm changing my return position. I'm also hitting returns for him so he can see some cause and effect of his serve. Most coaches will stand this side and talk to the player, but I've got a loud voice. I can communicate over the distance. I'm trying to make the environment, even though it's not a natural match play environment, one is on a wobble board, but I'm trying to make it look more realistic. I'm allowing him to take in information, my position, how I return the ball back as well. So now we've got like, and these are like a couple of maybe warm-up games that I tend to do. And this one's for spatial awareness, because we understand that, I mentioned this before, that we don't do a lot above the head. Our spatial awareness, our coordination, our dexterity above the head is limited because we don't do a lot up here as humans, mechanic maybe, but we don't hit a moving object. So that's why we find the overhead very difficult. So a little bit like yesterday, a little bit two-touch stuff going on. Players got to control the ball above head height and then play an overhead. If you want to talk about adaptable and adjustable skills, this is a real challenge for any player. And these are coaches. And you can see here, just getting the control of getting the ball up, but then the self-organization, how they get their body and footwork around the ball is really key, because they're not going to always push it up into the perfect place. And you can see that the guys on the right start having a little bit of fun with it and start sort of adjusting and adapting as well. And that's fine. Sitting down may not work too well. But what a great way to sort of get players explore that space above head height, to understand that they can actually self-organize their body underneath there as well. So a bit of two-touch tennis again, but this time with a bit of a twist where you've got to keep the ball above head height. And go back to the little junior player again. So again, this player's a good player, top 10 nationally here in the UK, under 10. Under 9 last year, now playing under 10. And we've got a little bit of differential learning. So on the tennis court, we've got some random tennis balls, and they are completely random. So he's hit the ball against the wall behind the camera, and the ball's rolled back out and stopped on the court. So he's not placed the balls out. He's actually set this up himself by hitting the ball from the far end. Where the balls have stopped, he's got to hit the serve from. And you can probably just see my position down the far end. We've been a bit more specific here because we want to try and develop his ability to serve towards the backhand side. So he himself has marked out a target area where he would feel comfortable trying to get the backhand into. But what he's got to do is get the backhand in, but from all these multiple positions. So a little bit like the girl yesterday with the differential learning exercise where we were rallying. But this one, it's a bit more fixed. But the player's got to find multiple serving solutions here from multiple positions. So when this player goes out and it's windy, he should be able to adapt. If the sun's in his eyes, he should be able to adapt, because he's going to try and find multiple different ways to hit it. And you can see now, as he starts getting towards the back couple of tennis balls, he's going to have to change how he hits. When he's further forward, he can strike down and really generate speed. As he's further back, because he's just 10 years old and now playing full court, he can't quite strike down as much. As you can see there, he's got to push up a little bit more. So I'm probably, or he's learning here about 8, 9 different ways to serve. And it is a little bit isolated because it is just a serve and return. We're not playing the point out just yet. But I'm allowing, there's a ball off, oh, he's missed it. But I'm allowing the player just to explore serving from different positions. There's nothing in the coaching textbook to say we have to get them to serve from the baseline. This is training. We are allowed to be crazy and create as much fun and chaos as possible. And we're getting towards the end of the presentation now, but the last one here is what I call challenge the performer. And to be fair, most tennis coaches do this because we tend to do the serve last 10 minutes of the session. But I want the player to, okay, well, can you serve when you're tired? Can you serve really when you're fatigued? And in this particular video, and in all my videos are from real lessons or workshops, but with the players, they are real lessons. The player has just done a squat and he's now just done a private lesson. So he's really fatigued and tired here. He's played a lot of tennis up to this point. But I want to see, okay, well, can you really serve when you're really tired? Can you serve in the 5th set or 3rd set? Can you serve in the 3rd match of a tournament as well as you did in the 1st? Because when we're tired, our behavior changes, our body changes. So now I'm seeing, okay, well, can you do it on the challenge? And all he's got to do, he's got to hit 4 serves into the backhand corner again. But in between each one, he's got to sprint there and back. Then he's got to get a ball, serve again. Doesn't have to serve straight away, because I want him to get used to recovering, deciding what he's going to do next, taking information. And it's interesting with this player because he's very keen to play, so he doesn't really stop in between points. So I encourage a lot of this to tire him out, but also to get him to stop and take in information, because now he's going to have to be really aware of his own capacity here. And you could do it where you feed him a couple of tennis balls or you play a point out as well. But I quite like doing this one as well, because I'm really trying to get him to sprint really hard. I'm trying to tire him out. Okay, and the challenge here for this young player is, okay, well, can you serve effectively and efficiently when you're tired? How big's your heart? And you can do 3 or 4 goes depending on the player. And last but not least, let's finish off with a competition, because again, people say to me, oh, serving's boring. Like, everything you've showed us is great. It's not as fun as what you did yesterday. Well, I'm really developing quite specific skills in those videos, but this is a little bit of fun that I have. And this was taken at a recent county team event. So county is like regional. I'm a county captain as well here in the UK. So this is my team warming up. So we haven't done a traditional tennis warm up here. We're playing points, and what we've got on this side, we've got 2 servers. Far side will have 2 returners. The 2 servers have to decide who is going to be the server. And then what they're going to do is one of them is going to do a fake serve. One of them is going to do a real serve. Whoever does the real serve stays on and plays the point out against their returner. So I'm bringing an element of chaos. I'm bringing an element of fun. This is great for the returner because you don't know who's going to serve. It's actually really challenging for the server as well, because again, environment-wise, you do have one eye on your partner because you're trying to do it at the same time, the same rhythm, and because you want to try and confuse the opposition as much as possible. But just the way in which you can bring it into some fun within your squad coaching. I actually did a version of this last night, funny enough, where both servers serve to one of the returners. So, for example, they both serve to the player down the far end in the blue, and then the player down the far end in the blue just has to return one of the balls, and then they play the point out. So there's a million ways in which you can adapt and sort of run with this exercise as well. But don't tell me serving can't be fun. Players love this type of stuff because it's chaotic. And that's what any player of any age and stage like. They want to play tennis. And there we go. So hopefully we had some learning objectives. Hopefully I've shown you ways in which we can bridge the gap between practice and the game. And like we said before, representative learning design. If it's low representative, the transfer of training is minimal. We've got to make that transfer of training higher by giving the players, like we said yesterday, multiple skills. Hopefully I've shown you some practice designs, and we've focused on a shot that a lot of coach educators tend to neglect, which is the serve, which, like we said before, is one of the most important shots in the world. Yes, it is complicated from a biomechanical point of view, but it doesn't have to be that in-depth. The players will find their own solutions if you give them the opportunity to develop their own. And if you're interested in more of my coaching methods, please head over to mytenniscoaching.com. We do have a My Tennis Coach Academy, which is a paid part of the website as well, where we have webinars, roundtables. You can download videos, practice designs, checklist ebooks. And we have a worldwide coach community as well, who are all using this methodology of coaching. And we share ideas, share problems, share challenges, and share lots of practice designs as well. So there you have it. Hopefully you've got lots of ideas how you can develop the serve via play. Check out the video on the screen now in which I share my 20 most valuable lessons from over 36,000 tennis lessons.